This is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. I hope you enjoyed this Critical Thought, your daily discussion on game design. Before we get going with today's Critical Thought, just a few bits of information I want to run by you guys. First, today I put up, basically we're heading into the last quarter of Bloodborne in my Let's Play. When that's all finished, I'm going to do essentially a rapid fire of little videos going through the boss fights and final challenges of the Old Hunters DLC. I figure this will be the best way to quickly wrap up playing Bloodborne, because I know that there's a ton of Bloodborne content here on YouTube already. So once that's done, we'll be able to move on to some other games. Speaking of which, I was asking about interest in doing a quick Let's Break of Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight, and I will get some more thoughts here from you guys. Would you like to see a run through it? The game could probably be maybe 4 or 5 hours long if I know what I'm doing, maybe even less than that, so it wouldn't be that long of a play. But let me know in the comments below. For today's Critical Thought, we're turning to a topic that was suggested in one of the comments, and that is there such a thing as too much DLC? And like I just said in the intro video, if you'd like to suggest a future Critical Thought, be sure to leave it below. When it comes to talking about DLC, it really goes with the games as a service model, or supporting a game for the long term beyond its initial release. This could be months to even years, depending upon the game. And when it comes to too much DLC, there's two parts of this I want to focus on for today. The first has to do with the initial release of the game. And this leads into discussions about Day 1 DLC and on the disc DLC. When it comes to Day 1 DLC, we're referring to content that is released with the game's actual release. This is usually after the game has gone gold, the developer may decide to work on it for who knows how long. Could be a few weeks, could be a few months. And this is content that was not originally available on the game, and this would be patched in later. Now, discussing more about Day 1 DLC is beyond the scope for today's post. On the disc DLC means that this is content that was developed during the game's initial development, put on the disc, and then remains locked until the developers decide to price it out in terms of DLC or microtransactions. And this is the first thing that annoys a lot of people, including myself. What this means is that this was content that was already done. They're not doing any more work with this, and it's being priced out separately from your initial purchase. Some examples of this lately would be Total Warhammer, which is the Total War series take on the Warhammer series, and Mortal Kombat 10. In Mortal Kombat 10, with the campaign mode or the story mode, they had characters, I think Rain, Baraka, and Tanya, that you could fight in game. They have all their moves, all their fatalities, it's all done, but you weren't allowed to play with them until you bought the DLC. In Total Warhammer, there are characters and factions and such that act as NPCs with the initial buy, but you can't use them unless you buy the DLC. And this kind of thing does rub people the wrong way. And it gets into that discussion of just what exactly you are buying when you put your who knows how much money down on a game. And when we talk about like $50, $60 games, like full retail, this is when people aren't as excited about DLC. Because when you're spending $60 on a game, that's akin to, going to a 5-star restaurant. You expect to spend a lot, but to get, the best quality stuff in return. Now, when we're talking about, $20, $30, like Payday 2, and they come out and say that we're going to be supporting this game in the future, it's looked at least a little bit more favorably. But we're going to be talking more about Payday 2 in a few minutes. When it comes to, again, the initial release of a game, the price of the game should reflect the content that's there. But that leads into another discussion regarding just what exactly do you include with your 1.0 release. A comment on actually yesterday's Critical Thought about when is the game finished kind of leads into this. But I think we'll explore more of that in greater detail with a later video. When it comes to video games, an important part of developing a game is knowing just what exactly do you want for 1.0. A common or sometimes a trap that first-time developers will do is go with the everything in the kitchen sink approach. That is, every bit of content they think of, they're going to put into 1.0. The problem with this is that, one, it kind of locks your game from growing forward. We talked about this on a live discussion a few weeks ago regarding Magic the Gathering, and how it's almost impossible for them to add in brand new mechanics or brand new colors just because everything's been solidified. When it comes to game development, what happens is it is very risky, again, to spend years working on a game. You could put 5 years worth of content into a game, but if no one buys it, you're kind of screwed. Arc Games has definitely had to shift their development model over the last few years. With A Valley Without Wind 1, they put a lot of time and effort and money into the game, and it didn't make a return. So what they've done is shifted to more of a kind of wait and see approach. They release their game at 1.0, usually at a cheaper price, but with enough content, built around one system. If the game does well enough, then they will expand things out further, like they did with Skyward Collapse. And I'm sure they had plans for, expansions 2, 3, 4, and 5, but that first expansion didn't sell. This way, developers can kind of hedge their bets. They have this content, or they have the idea behind this content for the future. If the game sells, they make more, people like it, they get more money, they keep going. If it doesn't sell, then you have a good enough game to go off, to end on, and then we move on to the next idea. Kind of like a wait and see approach to games as a service. But getting back to the topic regarding DLC, at least from the day one on the disc side of things, again, you really need to approach things in terms of value. If I'm buying your game at $60, I don't want on the disc DLC. If it's, $20, $30, that's a different story. Street Fighter, of course, ran into the problem when they released the game at $60 with content normally considered for the game absent. And again, with Total Warhammer, they're also running into that problem with having content in the game, but they're locking behind these additional paywalls. And when we're talking about $60 games plus DLC, it can piss people off. Now, the other side of this is the DLC overload. This is when there's just a ton of DLC in a game. And the example for today, this is part of the DLC for Train Simulator. Look at that price at the bottom, folks. That's over $2,500 of DLC, and I took the screenshot during the winter sale. So it's probably going to run you at least, maybe, I don't know, upwards of $3,500, maybe a little bit more than that. I don't have it available right in front of me, but there's a lot of DLC there if it's over $2,500 right away. And with this topic, this drives that perception of, is there too much DLC for a game? One of the things that we've seen, or we've talked about before, is that when people buy content for games or anything, they don't like to leave things unfinished. If they've done, 3/5 of a quest, they want to see it through. And that leads to a talk on psychology, which is, again, beyond today's discussion. It also is that old adage, in for a penny, in for a pound. Once you've bought 10 DLCs, what's another 5 if you enjoy the game? And Payday 2, Crusader Kings, and Train Simulator are definitely examples of this. And they each have multi-page spanning DLC content. The problem with this approach, I'm sorry for rubbing my nose so much, my allergies are really bothering me. The problem with this is that it presents a very, what's the word I'm looking up for? I guess dominating kind of page for someone new. They're going to look at this game, yes, it's only, $5 if it's on sale, but, there's an entire list of DLC, even if it is only a few dollars here and there, it's just very overwhelming. That's what I was thinking of. To have, all this stuff to buy. And when we talk about packaging DLC like this is where the idea of, the art of the sale comes into play. And it's easier on the consumer's point of view to say, let's say we have 10 DLCs priced at $1. it is better and it's easier on the eyes for someone to instead buy one DLC at $10 rather than 10 for $1 each, or for $1 each. Sorry about that. Because again, there's less DLC, but there's that preconception or that conception, or my mouth is dying, perception, there we go, of more value. And it is easier to say, look at 5 listings rather than 25, 50, 100. Now the other part of this is laying it out as clear as day, your DLC model. Payday 2, despite people complaining, has done a reasonable good job of this. Their DLC is broken down into either character, weapon, or heist. And what they do is each one is priced usually differently. A character pack is usually I think like $5, $5 or $6. A heist is about $6 or $7, and then a weapon pack is I think $4 or $5. Again, I don't have these values all right in front of me. But what each pack does is they tell you clear as day what you're going to get. If I buy a weapon pack, I know I'm going to get weapons, mods, and probably a few achievements. If I buy a character, I get the character, their mask, a perk deck, and a few weapons tied to them. If I buy a heist, it's heist, achievements, weapons, mask. And what this does is it allows them to set a precedent, there we go, I hope I said that right, for what you're going to get with a DLC. They're not going to release, a $1 DLC or a $35 DLC. Now, of course, they did the completely overkill pack, but that's an exception for this one. The problem, though, is when you start throwing in all kinds of DLC, it doesn't have a standard and leaves the consumer feeling confused, and it lets them sort of think that the developer is just messing with them. With Total War, for instance, they have just a scatter shot of DLC, and the same goes for Crusader Kings. When you look at the DLC list for Crusader Kings, there are the expansions, there's character customization, more songs, unit skins, even more stuff as it stands, and it just makes it very hard to track what goes where. When I was buying Crusader Kings on sale, I had to turn to a friend to tell me, okay, you want this DLC which includes this and this one includes this and this, don't buy this one because it includes this and this, buy this one that does over here and over here, and I was just like, yeah, okay, I just had to write it all down. And this is kind of what the issue is with Total Warhammer at the moment. Instead of having the DLC be cut and dry, one and done kind of things, what they do is they have DLC saying, okay, this DLC includes units and characters for this faction and this faction. Now this one will include DLC for this faction and this one. And then we have one that includes this and this and this one, and it's just so separated so you can't just buy one and be done. If I want, let's say I really like the Dwarves faction in Warhammer, I can't just buy one DLC and get everything Dwarf related. I have to buy, a little bit of this, a little bit of this one, a little bit of that, and I'm getting stuff that I'm not needing or I don't want. But here's the deal. There's a reason for that. It goes back again to that adage of completion. If I already, let's say, have bought 25% of the units for another faction, it's going to be easier for me to rationalize buying another DLC. Because I've already bought 25%, let me move that up to 50. Well, I'm at 50, let me go to 75. And again, it goes on and on and on. Of course, that is very much anti-consumer. Because if you wanted to be consumer, you would have just said, okay, this faction is $10 and includes all the Dwarf regular units. This one is maybe $3 and includes hero units. You want a new campaign? Okay, we're going to give you a separate campaign DLC. And then break that up accordingly. By splitting and, missing, matching, and stitching the DLC together, it both confuses the player and it bloats out the DLC. And this goes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago regarding the art of the sale. It's easier to sell DLC in terms of a little bit higher price but more content rather than just, bits and pieces here and there, all kinds of stuff like that. With Crusader Kings, for instance, I think it would have been easier to say, instead of just selling all the songs piecemeal at, I think it was like $1 or $2.99 a pop, have these larger packs saying, okay, you want, 10 songs, it's $15 or $12 or whatever. With Payday 2, they do their Game of the Year bundles for the DLC, but it does lead things being a little bit more confusing because you have, Game of the Year 2014, then you have Game of the Year 2015, and so on. But to wrap up today's critical thought, when it comes to DLC, as games as a service model goes, you're going to see more and more content going out. It's important to set standards for what you're going to offer the player. You want to be, as clear as day. My DLC will be this, this, and this. It will be priced at $5, $7, and $9. You will get this specific content. As long as you set a standard and adhere to it, it's usually looked at as being favorable. When it comes to on the disc and day one DLC, however, you have to be more careful. You have to understand what exactly someone's going to get when they put $40, $50, $60 down. And again, the more money that the initial purchase is should include more content. This is where the idea behind, pre-order bonuses, day one bonus, stuff like that, could come into play. Now, one other thing that I want to bring up. When I said a few minutes ago regarding the idea of bundling DLC together, there is a very good reason why developers don't do that. And it has to do with the sales idea. As you know, when we put games on sale for summer or winter, whatever, they usually go with flat discounts, 25% off the board, 50%, 75%, whatever. So when you have these bundles, it saves you more money because you're taking a bigger percentage of that cut. 10% off $1 is 10 cents. Or 25% would be 25 cents. But when you take 25% off of a $10 season pass, that's $2.50. Hopefully I did that math quickly in my head right. But developers, of course, want to get as much money from you as possible. So it's easier to have you buy, 100 DLCs straight down the line at, 25% off rather than just saying 25% off of $100. But for those of you watching, what do you think about all this DLC? I'm sure some of my regulars aren't as big fans about it. But for those of you watching, the question is, how would you handle, selling games as a service to consumers? Again, we're talking about months to even years worth of DLC. One of the problems with that, again, is that it becomes very daunting and overwhelming for new players. Again, if a game is like 2-3 years out, you go to buy it and you see, again, 50, 60, 70 pieces of DLC, even if it is only priced at $1 or $2, it's still very overwhelming for them. And again, how do you package that and sell it to new players? Let me know in the notes below or in the comments below. But otherwise, once again, thank you so much for watching today's Critical Thought. If you're enjoying the content, be sure to like and subscribe. And let me know what you think about those ideas for Let's Breaks. If you have any more suggestions, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I am Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com, where we examine the art and science of games. Be sure to check back daily for more great content here and on GameWisdom.com. Until then, have a great night, and talk to you all real soon. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and of course share with your friends. It always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GWBycer for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.